ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow!
Oh, that's because I pushed the wrong button. Okay.
Okay. Hey, what's this all about? You know, you sold me? That's probably pretty much the equivalent of firing me, but that's even more. No. He winked at me. Just kidding. I haven't been sold. I'm still here. Well, after all, I mean, Kristin and I went on a cross-country tour, and in the process, took care of a couple of pretty important stories for us. At least you told us they were pretty important, and we'll agree. But we made a couple stops. And if I can find that A again that you seem to have misplaced, well, let's take our word for it that an O and an A are supposed to be in there. And we visited, amongst other great places, we stopped in Mayflower, Arkansas. And why the word Keystone? Well, there was a pipeline that ran through there. And Basil sent us out there to cover a story that took place 2 years ago, and it's going to get on to cat news because apparently it never made it on to Fox News, or in fact really got very little coverage on any of the other major media outlets. CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS. Brian Williams never covered it, by the way. But he also sent us on a side trip into Alabama. While we were away, he called us and said, while you're coming out of Tupelo, Mississippi, and heading back across Alabama from there, why don't you stop at this Cathedral Caverns, Alabama? And the Alabama is in red because, well, Alabama, Crimson Tide, Go Tide, Roll Tide, whatever. So we got it that way. But all kidding aside, Roll Tide. So we stopped in Mayflower, Arkansas, and did a story about that. We're going to do a story about Cathedral Caverns, Alabama. We'll get to that. But first of all, welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson. I'm still, apparently, Basil's co-host, interpreter, and chief gopher. Kristin Schoenfeld, producer of the show, director, and the cat of all cats, Basil. Basil likes to remind everybody that even though he loves dogs dearly and has had a lot of good friends over the years amongst the dog crowd, and he still wants to point out that the cat, the language has two different sounds on it. And however, as he so aptly points out to me incessantly over and over and over again, ad nauseum, thank you, Latin, those two sounds can be combined, inflected, and you end up with, at this point, what are we up to, Basil? How many? Thank you, Basil said. Said, we're up to 926,312 different words, thoughts, ideas, concepts in the cat dictionary. In fact, a lot more than you'll find in our friendly Scrabble dictionary, which helps us when we play Scrabble. Sometimes with two sets of Scrabble tiles, because, what? he's asking me, so he wants to know, why is it, okay, it's a joke. So why is it that in 13 state capitals in the United States, you have outside the capital, not one, not just two, but three separate sets of Scrabble tiles and their accompanying Scrabble board? I don't know. Oh, okay. He said, well, it's in conjunction with the Confederate flag. And it's 20th century and 21st century application by folks at Basil will, he'll call them, he'll use a gentle word for them, racists. Okay. Said you have three sets of tiles outside of all three capitals next to the Confederate flag, which apparently is in some usage either incorporated into the flags of those 13 states or out on the lawn of their Capitol building or somewhere on public display. And it takes three Scrabble boards and the Scrabble tiles that go along with them to give you three-letter Ks. Okay. All right. Enough of that. So back to the language. So you've got 926,400 and how many? 418 at this point. Different words, thoughts, ideas in cat. So it's certainly a more complex language than any other language on Earth by far. But Basil just likes to point out that dog has two sounds in it and two sounds in it also. It's got the same number of sounds, but out of those two sounds, and you can only combine and compare and contrast and put together those two sounds to make four different ideas in dog. Only four come out of those two sounds, not 926,814 like in cat. And what are those four sounds? Well, Basil's told me enough times that I can recite it back to you. Dog has these four ideas. And look at that. Okay. Got some hummus from Sunset Crater in Arizona, and don't get upset. You can buy this everywhere in Arizona, including places that are right outside of the petrified forest. But you can see the wood, the xylem on the outside of a tree. You can see the interior of a tree, and these are pieces from an actual petrified tree. There are some petrified trees inside the petrified forest that are 10, 20, 30, 40 feet long, snapped off in places, but you can see the entire trees set out, and they're just magnificent. But outside of the petrified forest, you can buy actual petrified wood, and we did. So that's where that came from. So dog, four ideas. The four ideas are: scratch my belly, take me for a walk, feed me, and oops, I piddled on your carpet. So without any effrontery toward dogs, Basil just wants it to be known that compared to dogs and compared to any language on Earth other than cat reigns supreme. So now, okay, so here's how the vacation went. I want to give a little background on the vacation, if you don't mind. Basil said, said, if you must. Well, since you didn't offer, but I asked, I'm going to do it. Okay, so we left Connecticut. We traveled in all over 26 states. And I won't mention all of them because it would take the entire show. But our key spots that we went to was we visited Sarah and her family in Virginia. We stayed overnight in Shenandoah Park, the Skyline Drive that runs down through a good portion of Virginia and a good portion of North Carolina. Skyline Drive, the Blue Ridge Mountains, magnificent overlook, some great places to see, some incredible wildlife. We saw tortoises, of course we saw deer, and in fact we saw a black bear and a cub. And we got to try to get a picture of that, but they're pretty quick. We got a picture where if you blow the picture up 20 or 30 times over it, you can see the bear and her cub. So then from there, across Virginia, across Kentucky, West Virginia, quick stop in Ohio, just so we could say he'd been there, across the Ohio River into Ohio for a bite to eat. Continued back Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, to St. Louis. Went up in the Arch, walked around St. Louis some, almost went to a baseball game. We had plans to go to a Cardinal game against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and weather was threatening. It was raining off and on throughout the day. We decided that since there was a fair likelihood that we would end up with a rain ticket, or ticket stub for another game one day in the future when we get back to St. Louis, we decided to hold on and not go. And as it turned out, the game didn't get started until 10 o'clock at night anyway. So it would have been a rough one for us, having driven all that distance to stay up that late to watch a baseball game. So we decided to head up to Hannibal, Missouri. Hannibal, Missouri, of course, where Mark Twain Cave is. We visited the cave the next day, stayed overnight there, visited the cave the next day. We saw all the great things there are to see in Hannibal. Got an incredibly fine tour of the Mark Twain Cave. They've got some great young tour guides that generally just out of high school, and sometimes they'll have an occasional college kid that does it on summer break. But you can get a great tour of the cave, and there's all kinds of imaginative graffiti on the inside of the cave. Not allowed anymore since the cave was turned into a national monument in the 1970s. But all kinds of graffiti made by candle wax, scratched in with knives, of people going back as far as 150 years who were in the cave. And the graffiti is still there. They've left it so people can see the history of the cave, and the fact that Jesse James spent some time there, and a great cave to visit. From there, we went out, rather than on Interstate 70 out to Colorado, and traveling 70 plus miles an hour, we went on Route 36 from Hannibal. You know, Basil sent us a text while we were on our way out there, and it got to us a couple days too late, but he wanted us to stop in a suburban area of St. Louis. Now, we did eat lunch at a Steak and Shake outside of St. Louis, but he wanted us to actually go to Ferguson, Missouri, and do a report back from there, where the tragedy took place back over last summer. And sorry, we missed that one. We'll catch that one on the next trip. So from Hannibal, rather than on Interstate 70, we went out Route 36, which is a highway, but it's a two-lane highway. And what we gave up was 70 to 75 miles an hour on an interstate, but what we got was a lot of great historical markers. And those markers included the first oil well drilled in Kansas. Pardon me, the first oil well drilled in Nebraska. We saw a magnificent wind farm also in Nebraska. We saw a lot of historical markers that if you Google historical markers, Route 36, Kansas or Missouri, you could get a list of all those if you wanted to pick out any particular ones. And what we gave up in exchange for seeing all those great markers and places was that we traveled 65 miles an hour rather than 70 plus. We traveled 65 miles an hour. Could have gone a little faster, but decided not to. 65 miles an hour. And between Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska, we're talking over 600 miles of driving during the daytime. 8 times we had to slow down from 65, 55, 45, 35, right back up to 65. Because the towns along the way don't even have a traffic light. They don't even have a stoplight. So it was there was a great alternative to Interstate 70. Then out to Colorado, across part of Colorado, and to Estes Park, Colorado, and up and over the Continental Divide, where you're up as high as over 11,000 feet, with some great scenic overlooks. Cautionary tale: the end of May, after we were there, after Memorial Day, they had just plowed out the road up and over the weekend before. So if you go out there, sometimes as late May, and sometimes as early as mid-October, you're not going to be able to go up and over because the road becomes closed because the snowfall there is just phenomenal. It snows quite a bit and gets pretty cold at 8, 9, 10, 11,000 feet above sea level. Saw some great sights there, up and over, went through the rest of Colorado, into Utah. We did not go to Dinosaur National Park. There were some things we had hoped to see that we just had to hold off for the next trip. Down through Utah on Interstate 15, superhighway, and off of 15, deconduct a few times in order to go on the extraterrestrial highway. That's in Utah. No, pardon me, that's in Nevada. And along the extraterrestrial highway, it's named that, it's Route 375. Along that, there's a portion of Area 51. And those of you that are alien aficionados, you'll know what Area 51 represents. There was an item called the Black Mailbox, which had some alien significance. It's been stolen so many times now that apparently that people decided not to put it back up. But there is a little spot we had dinner called the Little Alien Inn. And if you've ever seen the movie Paul, which is a great comedy about an alien named Paul, also a dog named Paul along the way, we ate there, and there's a lot of memorabilia from the movie and a lot of alien memorabilia right there in the Little Alien Inn. We had a great time there. Back onto Interstate 15, down to Las Vegas. Spent the night in Las Vegas in a hotel, America's Best Value Inn. It was just a block off the strip, but from our balcony we could see the entire strip. Decided that rather than go through the casinos and have the ching ka-ching ka-ching ding 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 echoing through our head for days, we decided not to go in there. We decided to forego that. We got a good night's sleep, headed out, went across the Hoover Dam into Arizona, saw that Lake Mead it's about 10% of capacity at this point. There's really not much water left to give to the state of California, to Las Vegas, or anywhere else for that matter. Colorado, which the Colorado River runs through, which ends up at Lake Mead. The Colorado River is tapped into by Colorado also, so the river is pretty much tapped out. And this is a river that provides California and California's agriculture that provides a third of the crops, a third of the food for America, is pretty much tapped out. So good luck with that, California, and good luck Las Vegas for your drinking water supply in the near future. So across the Hoover Dam, and matter of fact, the Lake Mead used to be high recreation usage for boating, and the level is so low that the launches into the lake have had to have been moved over the decades 2 miles, perhaps even a little bit more, in further because the lake doesn't extend out to anywhere near as far as it used to. So then into Arizona, Sunset Crater, Meteor Crater, Painted Desert, Petrified Forest. We passed on Canyon de Chelly because there were only a limited number of things we could do in 2.5 weeks. Down into New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico, a pretty little city that's got a couple of great museums, alien museums, and a lot of other zaniness that goes on there. Down to Carlsbad Caverns, saw the bats come out at dusk, and literally, I would say 200 bats per second emerged from the cave in a giant swirl for over an hour. Hundreds of thousands of bats emerge. They make a fair amount of sound, by the way, as they come out, and I'll get to my reference to the windmill farms from that. But they come out and head off into the surrounding areas and eat insects, and then return before dawn. At which time birds take over their duty of eating insects. So from Carlsbad, we finished our way across New Mexico, across Texas, saw the third of our 3 giant windmill farms, and the most glorious one of the 3 in La Mesa, Texas, Youngblood Ranch. And we had literally, and this is on a state highway, this wasn't on an interstate, it was on a state highway in La Mesa, Texas. Literally thousands of windmills, giant wind turbines on both sides of the road. And we've got a video of it, which is up on YouTube. We've got it up there if you want to Google Kristin 40, Kristin 40. You'll see the La Mesa, Texas video of the windmills turning. And they turn about, I'm going to say about once a minute. A turbine will make a complete revolution. And generates quite a bit of electricity based on that giant turbine making that revolution. But multiply that times thousands of wind turbines, which make about the following sound. Essentially, they're a whisper. There's a whisper of a sound that emerge from these thousands of wind turbines. You can hear the crickets chirp. You can hear every bird that flies past you, and it seems like more often than not they flew past us and dropped a turd on our car. But you can hear every bird that comes by, the sound of it singing. It's just amazing how quiet they are. And apparently the wind that comes across the plains in a great portion of the United States comes across 10, 15, 20 miles an hour on pretty much a 24/7 basis. Creates a huge amount of wind and consequently a huge amount of electricity for distribution into the grid to be used anywhere and everywhere that the grid travels in the United States. From there through Texas up into Arkansas and up to Mayflower, Arkansas. And that's the first story we did for Basil. And Basil sent us to Mayflower because in 2013 there was a massive oil spill of the original Keystone Pipeline. It sprung a leak adjacent to a neighborhood, a big subdivision of relatively new homes. It feet and feet and feet of oil on top of the ground. Destroyed, did a lot of damage to the homes. It destroyed all the land, all the dirt around the homes in the neighborhood. Headed toward a very important lake. Now, Mayflower is it's less than an hour from Little Rock, so it's a great spot if you're in Little Rock to visit. So Basil had given us some information to go there. We went into town hall there. Got some great assistance from the folks in town hall, the mayor's office, and more importantly, the fire chief there, who gave us a map, showed us how to get to the neighborhood, gave us a lot of information on the damage that was done, how he was out of town. He got a phone call and was told there was an oil leak, and he said basically, "Well, okay, we'll put the oil leak protocol into place." And he was told, "No, this is a little bit more serious than just an oil leak." So he headed back. They worked diligently, the townspeople did, to stop the oil from making its way. Some of it got into the lake and did some damage, but through a lot of hard work on the part of the people of Mayflower, Arkansas, the lake sustained minimal damage. The oil spill was contained after it ruined the neighborhood. Exxon-Mobil, who owns the pipeline, graciously, and I put that in quotes, tried to buy out all the homeowners, to give them fair market value of their homes in exchange for ruining their lives, at least that portion of their lives. And most everybody sold out to Exxon-Mobil. A few stalwarts stayed back and held onto their homes and continued the lawsuit. The houses were, the feet and feet of land were excavated and carried away, and new dirt brought in, new lawns planted. All the interior of the homes sustained major damage to the floor and up the walls. So there was a lot of repair work went into there, from new floors being put in to new walling to painting and other finishing touches. And Exxon-Mobil put the houses on the market in dribs and drabs and sold them to new buyers. I met a new buyer, one that bought about a year ago, a home there, and she gave me a lot of the scoop on the process and what went down there. And just a tragedy. You never heard of this? And Basil said, make sure you tell everybody how. Don't be surprised about the fact you never heard about this pipeline spill in 2013, because first of all, they had a no-fly zone over the town, so you couldn't take pictures from the air of this oil spill. And the story was basically persona non-story, or story non-grata, on all the media outlets, not just Fox, but CNN, ABC, NBC. Did I miss any of them? All the major outlets just pretty much passed on the story. There was one brave guy that snuck into the area and got some footage, some video footage to show what had taken place. That's on the internet. But a lot of horrific damage done by a pipeline named Keystone. That apparently they want to build another one, and that's a big tussle going on in Congress. So, at any rate, we're going to get to a little bit more about that in the next show, and then Basil BuddhaCat presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's co-host, interpreter, chief gopher, and thankfully still in that position because I guess I did a pretty good job for him on the show, on the Mayflower. We'll get to that, and we'll get to Cathedral Caverns in Alabama on our next show. See you Sunday morning.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.